Behavioral biases of individuals. So let me just give you a little context in which we should understand these behavioral biases. Think about your equity learning module called market efficiency. And we did talk about these behavioral biases in that learning module as well, which said that if the markets are efficient, and when we said efficient, we said that they have to be operationally efficient, which means the cost of buying and selling the securities should be very low, and they have to be informationally efficient. Now, what did that mean? It meant that everybody has all the information, right? That's one part of it. And the other part is that everybody is rational enough to take the optimal decision on it, which would then result in the market price of securities being equal to or close to their intrinsic value, right? And what does that mean? That means the intrinsic value, which let's say is the present value of future cash flows. So everybody has enough information to be able to come up with the most plausible projection of these future cash flows, and then be rational enough to then, discount them back to today using the most appropriate discount rate, and then make the market price equal to that by either buying it and taking it up if it is lower than that, or selling it and bringing it down. Either way, bringing it equal to or close to being equal to the intrinsic value. This is what an efficient market would be. Now, in that reading, we also talked about that the markets could be semi-strong form efficient, strong form efficient. So obviously, the information that you are assuming is available to everybody. If you're assuming even private information is available to everybody, which is impossible, because then that information wouldn't be private if it's available to everybody, right? So that's why strong form markets don't exist. But yes, semi-strong form markets do exist. And that is the United States of America. You've got the New York Stock Exchange as an example of the semi-strong form markets in the world, which means all public information is available to everybody, and people are rational enough to use that to come up with the intrinsic value. And not just that, the markets are operationally efficient enough to then help them use that information to bring the price of the securities to that intrinsic value. But right, what's the reality? And you're so lucky that you're being told about all this behavioral finance at level 1. When I did my CFA, it wasn't till level 3 that we were introduced to the world of behavioral finance and behavioral economics. Level 1 and level 2 was mostly traditional finance. And in level 3, we were told that, hey, listen, all that traditional finance, yeah, it's true. Markets are, the efficient market hypothesis is true for the most part, but people are not perfectly rational. They have behavioral biases, right? And those biases can be divided into two broad categories. One of them is cognitive and the other one is emotional. And this is such a huge opportunity, because if you can understand that what are the mistakes people are doing, number one, you can stop making those mistakes. But number two, you can take advantage of the inefficiency in the market, right? So if you are able to find a stock that is low, or able to find that that's a stock that is higher than its intrinsic value, so there is a possible opportunity to make money here, right? Now, that's why it's really, really important to understand what are these behavioral biases, how do we classify them into these different categories, and then what does that have to do with the market? Right? How does all of this then impact the market? So this is the high level context. Now let's get into the details of these behavioral biases. So the introduction, as we've already discussed, that traditional finance assumes that individuals are rational. And for the most part, they are, right? Especially because, not all individuals directly transact in the financial markets. They are transacting through professionals. And because of that, even if that individual is not completely rational and able to take financial economic decisions rationally, their representative might be. So when their part of the interaction with the financial markets comes in, it comes in through a filter So I mean, this assumption is not really all bad, but it's not 100% correct. Not all individuals which are operating in the financial markets are perfectly rational, and not all of them are taking into account all the available information. There are so many biases which you will see now that show you that how we ignore information. It's available to us, we just don't take it into account, right? We might not want to see it. We might want to only look for information that confirms the view that we have, right? And right at the beginning of this learning module, I would like to tell you that when we talk about these behavioral biases, the two broad categories are cognitive and emotional. So, cognitive is something which is wrong with us in terms of the way we are thinking or the way we are processing information. So, when I said that not taking all available information, that comes under cognitive biases. And within cognitive biases, you will have something called belief preservation, that for multiple different reasons, we might not want to change our belief, right? We're preserving our current belief. And that could happen because of multiple different reasons, and we'll talk about all those different reasons. And the other one is that it's information processing, that we are not taking into account, like there's some problem in us not being able to process all the information correct. And then we'll talk about the emotional bias. Now, the big difference between cognitive and emotional is that emotional is very hard to fix, right? Almost impossible to fix. But cognitive is fixable, because I mean, you're processing information incorrectly. Well, you can learn what you're doing wrong and then you can fix it. Belief preservation, same situation, that you're not updating yourself with the new information, or you're just looking for information that confirms your point of view, but ignoring the one which kind of creates a cognitive dissonance in your mind, which also, by the way, is a very, very interesting term that we need to understand, that what is cognitive dissonance, that why do we have these biases. I mean, what's the problem in our minds? So of course, we're going to first categorize these biases in two categories, cognitive and emotional. Then we'll talk about cognitive, then we'll talk about emotional, and then we'll link all of this to market behavior and how market inefficiencies or anomalies are there. Now, guys, first of all, cognitive errors. I think it's very important to understand what is cognitive dissonance. So it's like, I mean, we get annoyed because we have a certain belief. All of us like to believe that we understand the world that we live in. And it gives us a sense of calm that, okay, yeah, I know what's going on, right? But then if something happens which challenges our existing beliefs, then we don't want to accept it, because then it would really shake up our entire way of thinking, right? And then we would have to question what we've been doing. So we resist information. Now, this leads to two types of problems: belief preservation, that we might not change our belief, right? We're preserving our existing belief. So we don't want to let that new belief come in, or that change of perspective come in, because it's causing cognitive dissonance in our mind. Or we might just be doing some kind of incorrect information processing, which again we do because we don't want that cognitive dissonance to bother us, right? So how do we solve these problems? We're going to talk about it in detail. But the good thing is that these can be corrected, right? I mean, there's some mistake that we are doing in terms of information processing, or our reasoning is wrong. But if we educate ourselves or our clients, we give them better information, we educate them, they should be able to see the wrong in their ways and understand that, oh, okay, this is why I'm ignoring this information, or I'm not taking it into account, but I should. And I understand that why I wasn't doing it, and now I will do it. So these are fixable problems. But when you talk about the emotional, now these are relatively impossible to correct, right? And what you will learn as you go along your CFA level 2 and level 3 studies as well, that when you're dealing with a client, you really don't want to force them to try to solve their emotional biases. I mean, you probably can see it in their behavior, right? They probably realize it too. And you can try just a little bit in a delicate way to see if they can fix it. But if they can't, then we don't press too hard on solving these emotional biases, because they might be having some deep rooted feelings, and there's psychological factors involved here, and some people just like to take spontaneous decisions. I mean, in which case you could possibly try to disconnect them from their decision making, right? So that they are not able to harm themselves in terms of their portfolio management decisions. But definitely don't try to change them. You can try a little bit, right? So it is possible to correct them, but if you're not able to, then we're not supposed to exert too much pressure on these biases. Right. So now let's get a little bit into more detail regarding cognitive biases. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll get into behavioral biases. Emotional biases later on. Rather, actually, what I would suggest is let's do a video just for the belief preservation now, right? And then we'll take a break, and then we'll do a separate one for information processing. Now, let me give you a little bit of a high-level intro into belief preservation. Then we'll get into detailed discussion about each one of these. So, all of these 5 behavioral biases which come under the cognitive category, which comes under the belief preservation, are basically where you are not changing your existing belief, right? You don't want that new information or that change of belief to mess with your mind, because you don't want to feel that cognitive dissonance. But the reason or the way you might be holding on to your existing belief is different, right? It might be conservatism, which means, okay, this is what I believe and I'm not changing. This is how it has been done always, right? So people who are conservative just do what they have been doing, and they are not interested in anything new. Another reason could be confirmation. Now, I think I really suffer from this bias, because when I have a particular view about a stock, that, oh yeah, this stock is going to do really well because this is what's going to happen in this company, and then whenever I see news articles or whenever I see like new research reports about that stock, I tend to read the ones that sort of confirm my existing view. And then if somebody is saying that, oh no, this is not what it's like, I tend to ignore that. I'll give you an example, right? So, for example, I've got this biotech stock that I'm invested in, and it's coming up with a medicine, and I'm like really hopeful that it's going to get the FDA approval and everything. And then I read about this other company which is coming up with a medicine for the same disease, and that other company's medicine is apparently much better, right? It's going to be helping the patients much faster. The treatment is much faster for that, and I'm just like blocking it out. It's like you're acting as an ostrich and you're putting your head in the sand and not looking at the danger. When you know the danger is there, but you don't want to accept it, because then it would change the thesis that you have of your existing investment. And you just don't want to change it, right? I mean, it would really cause cognitive dissonance in your mind that, oh, so does that mean I'm wrong, right? And it's not just about wrong. It's like maybe you're a little bit lazy to then I have to go and sell it. And then with selling, there is something else that really comes into picture. And but that's emotional. So, I mean, let me just tell you a little bit about it now, because this is something that will really help you understand the linkages between your emotional biases as well. So, I mean, when you get to the complete other category, which is emotional, so in cognitive, we looked at something called confirmation bias. Now, that's a processing error, right? That's a processing error, that I'm not looking at that bad piece of information. And that can be solved. I mean, you can come and tell me that, hey, listen, why are you acting like an ostrich with your head in the sand? Please take your head out and see that there is another company which is bringing the same medicine or another medicine for the same disease, and they're going to solve this problem in a much bigger way. And then I do see my error, right? And I do take that information into account. I go through all that research and I'm like, yeah, you're right. They are going to come up with a better medicine. So now what do I have to do? I have to go and sell my existing investment. But the problem with that is, that it's not at cost, it's below cost. So now I start dealing with a completely different type of bias, which comes under the category of emotional biases, which is that I don't want to book that loss, right? I'm hoping that it turns around, I'm hoping that this new information is wrong, and this is a much more difficult position to be in, right? I mean, this bias is hard to solve because now it's rooted in something that, oh, my utility for loss is much higher than what. So the way loss aversion works is that, okay, if you're having profits or gains, right? I mean, you get, this is, let's say, your level of happiness or level of sadness, right? So yeah, I mean, if it works out, you're really happy. But if even if it's for, let's say you get 100% gain, you're really happy. But even if you get like let's say here is your 100% gain, right? You get, let's say, 10 units of happiness. But if you get even a 10% loss, right? I mean, you get like super sad, like 50 units of sadness. So the way we get sad is a lot more than the way we get happy when it comes to gains and losses. Like, losses create a huge amount of sadness in us. That's why, and also, I mean, that loss is already there. I mean, it's not like that loss is going to happen. That security is already down. I just don't want to realize it. I just don't want to accept it that I was wrong and it's gone down. And then I just hold on to it. But at least now I know that, okay, I'm not selling this because I'm failing to take that new information into account. That cognitive part is solvable. But the emotional part is now what I'm struggling with. So at least I know that, okay, this is my problem, that if I sell it now, then I'll get really sad. But then maybe if I'm strong enough, I'll say, okay, I'll get sad, I'll get over it, I'll buy another stock and I'll make my returns. Right? But it's really hard to do. So maybe my if I wasn't managing my investments myself, my portfolio manager would have had a stop loss. And if it didn't work out, if the trade didn't work out, it would just sell and come out of it. Right? So emotional is really hard to deal with, and dealing with it yourself is difficult. So anyways, we'll come back to emotional later. So anyways, now coming back to our discussion on cognitive errors, and within cognitive errors, belief preservation. So we talked about conservatism, that you just don't want to take new information into account. We're like, this is what I do and this is what I will continue to do regardless of what anybody says, right? Confirmation bias is just looking for information that confirms your belief, and you ignore the one which is going to create cognitive dissonance for you. Representative bias, this is an interesting one. What I like to use the word over here is gambler's fallacy. Gambler's fallacy. And what that means is that, hey, I might be coming into the stock market, and I'm the first stock that I might buy might have just been beginner's luck, and my past experience was fantastic, that wow, I'm so lucky at this, or I'm so good at it. And then maybe the process that I followed was that I looked at a certain research analyst's report and I followed it and it worked out really well for me. So then I see another report by a research analyst and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to follow the same process because it worked for me last time. Now, maybe last time there was something else at play, right? Maybe last time I just got lucky. So even new information, if I take not on the basis of, okay, what is that new information? What is he or she saying? What's the bigger picture? Instead of actually taking that information on what it's really worth, you use your past experience to classify new information. And it's like a gambler, right, walking into a casino and just making it big in the first bet that he or she places, and then he thinks that, oh, every bet I'm going to place is going to be like that. So we should not link our past experiences with the future decisions, because every decision is a new decision. It has to be taken on its own merits, right? So don't link past experiences with future decisions. The next one is illusion of control. The illusion of control basically is that you think you are in control, which most of us, or maybe all of us, are not, right? No matter who we are or how powerful we are, the reality is that time and again we have seen that we have absolutely no idea of what can happen. I mean, think of COVID, right? Did anybody think that something like COVID would happen? So we had no idea. Okay, maybe Bill Gates was talking about it, but nobody really listened to him, right? I mean, we weren't really that prepared for it. So the reality is that you might not change your opinion about something. You might keep sticking to your existing belief because you might think that, yeah, I'm in control. No matter what happens, I know I can handle it. So you might, stick to your existing belief. And then hindsight bias, which is kind of linked to the illusion of control, because you look back and you say, yeah, look, I am in control. The good thing I did. And then you look at all the good things and you say, yeah, I have done all of them. And you look at all the bad things and you say, no, those weren't my fault. That was that person's fault. And that was that person's fault. And I've learned from it. And I'm not going to let them, spoil my decisions in future. So, yeah, the past events have been something that I know how to deal with them, and I have dealt with them, and I can continue to do that in the future. So therefore, I don't need to worry about this new piece of information. So these are all your belief preservation biases. We'll talk about information processing later, right? Let's just focus on belief preservation first, and then we'll get into information processing. So conservatism. Let's jump into conservatism. And before that, let me just emphasize that all of these are linked to cognitive dissonance, that we don't want to take that new information into account because it will mess with our existing belief. And we don't like that because it creates mental discomfort. So conservatism is basically that, okay, you don't take new information into account, you are maintaining your existing view, or you're slow to update it, right? Because you don't want that mental stress. And this could cause you to hold a security longer than a rational decision maker. I feel like all of this really applies to me because I have such a hard time changing my view once I take a one. And in the past it has worked for me, right? Because I looked at a security, I liked it, I bought it, I held on to it for a number of years, and then eventually it did really well. So it's really difficult to actually fix these biases, but at least these ones are fixable. So how do you overcome the conservative bias? Well, number one, the first step is to accept that you are slow to update and that you suffer from cognitive dissonance. And it's not new, it's not individual, it's not you, it's everyone, right? We all suffer from cognitive dissonance. We like to believe that we understand the world and we know what's going on, right? We've got it all figured out. But then something new comes around and you're like, oh my God, this new information is messing with my existing worldview. So recognize that that's normal, right? And deal with it, that, okay, new information, how should I change my forecast? What's the impact, right? How can I update my belief? And most importantly, how can I seek expert advice? You don't have to do everything yourself. You can talk to an expert in the field. So, for example, a client might be insisting that, so now coming to the confirmation bias, now here we only look at the positive information and ignore the negative information, which means, they could just be so convinced about their part of the understanding and they keep confirming that, and they keep concentrated portfolios like me, right? Hold a disproportionate amount of investment in your own company's stock, right? So that means that, okay, so you might just probably always be getting bombarded with information that, yeah, we're going to do so well. And then this is my brother-in-law, he has majority of his savings in like his own the company that he works for. I keep telling him that, you what if you lose your job, or what if something happens to the company you work for? Not only do you lose your job, you also lose your savings. So it's not a very smart thing to do. But then they might be continuously getting bombarded with information that, yeah, this company is the best, this company is the best. And maybe there's a little bit of that illusion of control angle over there as well, that they feel that, oh yeah, we've made such good plans and we're completely in control and we're going to be the best company. So there's a lot of interplay between these biases as well. Now, how do you fix it? Again, seek information, right? So solutions are also similar, that be open-minded, be open to information that is going to challenge your belief, get other sources, be open about it, right? Be open-minded and listen to other people who might not be saying what you like, but it might be in your best interest to actually listen to them and keep an open mind. Representative bias is a little tricky one to understand, by the way. So, I'm going to help you here. Gambler's fallacy is something that can help you understand the representative bias. So gambler's fallacy, as I was telling you, is that somebody who just got beginner's luck, right? And that might be in the stock market as well, right? I mean, it happens. So now just because you've had beginner's luck and now you get a new information, that's not going to mean that you are going to be able to do the same thing again, right? So what we actually ignore is the bigger picture. What we ignore is the probability. So I mean, like, think about it. I mean, you walk into a casino, you do your slot machine and you win. But now when you're doing the slot machine the second time, what are the odds of you winning? So we ignore the odds, which is base rate neglect, and we also ignore the sample size that, okay, we won once, right? Does that mean we're going to win every time? So the past experience, the sample size is very small, but we ignore that. We ignore the base rate, that how many people actually win against a slot machine, or how many people actually win in the stock market, right? Not that I'm comparing the slot machine to the stock market, but obviously stock market, the ratio of people winning or having positive investments is much bigger than a slot machine. So okay, the base rate is much better, but it's still not that good, right? A lot of people lose money in the financial markets. So just because you won, so your past experience says, yeah, I mean, I had beginner's luck, but then look at the base rate. Don't neglect the base rate that 95% of the people still lose money when they're managing their own investments, right? And look at the sample size. You won once. Take the bigger view here, right? So what happens? I mean, of course, we would then just be kind of jumping onto new information, right? So it's kind of the opposite of conservatism bias, that we are conservatism bias was that you were not taking into account the new information, right? But in confirmation bias, we were taking into account the new information, but we were being selective about it, right? We were only taking the information that suits us, that confirms our belief, and we were avoiding the information that doesn't cause discomfort to us in our mind. So no cognitive dissonance. Here, we're taking the new information into account, but we are overweighting it based on our past experience. We're not actually taking it for what it is. We're not taking the bigger picture view that, okay, this information is coming. What is the bigger view here, right? I mean, what happens usually in this type of a scenario? We're taking a very small sample size of our own past experiences and blowing it up and taking that new information in perspective of our past experience, instead of looking at the fact that our experience is a very small sample size, and we should instead look at what happens to most people when that type of a situation is there, whatever the new information might be, right? So obviously the solution is awareness. You need to be aware of what's really going on, and you need to focus on the reality, the bigger picture, the overlooking reality, that okay, so what really happens to majority of the people. So don't neglect the base rate. Look at the base rate. Look at what majority of the people face in this type of a situation. Don't use your past experiences to take your future decisions. Illusion of control is very simple, right? We think we're in control, but we are not. And especially it could be your own company's future. And again, this ties in with my brother-in-law's example, that he's got all this investment in his company stock, which he works for as well. So if that something happens to that company, not only does he lose his job, he loses his investment as well, right? So that's kind of a silly thing to do, but then why do people do it, right? Why do they stick to that belief and not change that belief? Is because they're like, oh, we've made like the best 10-year plan or the 5-year plan, we've got the best strategy, and we know what's going on and we know what's going to happen. I mean, like, yeah, so did BlackBerry. What happened to them, right? So did Nokia. What happened to them? So really nobody really is in control, and we should realize that it's a world which is moving. There are probabilities, there's no certainty. Global capitalism is complex. Even powerful investors have little control over their outcomes. I mean, look at what happened to AIG. Look at what happened to BlackBerry, to Lehman Brothers, right? To Nokia. And yeah, so you should keep an open mind, seek contrary viewpoints, and of course keep records of what you have done in the past, so that if you have been wrong, it could really help you open up your mind and see that you're not perfect, and that we all are not perfect and we can make mistakes. Hindsight bias, this is something I really dislike. A lot of people do that. You know, what they do is they would feel that, yeah, I would have sold here and bought here. So let's say if I make this chart for you, and they would be like, yeah, I would definitely sell here and I would definitely buy here. Yeah, well, what would you do now? I mean, let's say you're standing over here now. Are you going to sell now or buy now? Because see, it's only a peak when you look back at it. So if I look from this point, I know this was a peak, right? But then this one, is it going to go higher or is it going to go lower? Nobody really knows. So in hindsight, it's very easy to say that, yeah, these events would have been predictable. Or, oh, that 2008 financial crisis was so predictable. I could have done it as well. Or, oh, yeah, COVID was like super predictable, right? I mean, Bill Gates even saw it coming. I mean, so this is a really annoying bias. It's not predictable. These things are not predictable. We had absolutely no idea, right? So it gives you a false sense of confidence that, yeah, I would have definitely sold here and bought here, but the reality is that you wouldn't have known that that was a peak or that was a trough. It's only that when we look back, it looks obvious. So recognize the bias that we are not able to actually predict these events, right? And then, of course, try and position yourself in a way where you know that you could be wrong as well. Well, you know what really works for me is that what I've done is that whenever I want to sell, well, I don't follow it, but I've come to this conclusion that this is a very good way of possibly solving this hindsight bias. Is that whenever one of your investments starts going up, it could still go up, right? But it could come back down as well. So since we realize and recognize that we don't know what's going on, so instead of selling all of it and taking all the gains, you could maybe sell half and keep half. In which way, if it goes up more, you still have half. But if it comes down, at least you sold half, right? And similarly, if something is coming down, instead of selling all of it, maybe you could sell half. So that really works. I mean, it should work, but it's really hard to do. Anyways, so this, my friends, was the part on your belief preservation, right? And then now moving on, we're going to look at our processing errors.